I think for us, it's an opportunity time, and the way I look at it is opportunity to build a different kind of model going forward that specializes in it is staying agile, fast, nimble, and moving quicker than what the large guys have been able to accomplish. And just even yesterday or the day before, if you read in the strategy magazine or advertising age, where Dentsu, which was my ex-boss Wendy Clark, went to Dentsu, and it's not really her doing, but they laid off 12.5% of their entire workforce, which is 6,000 people. And while that one was promoted, the same thing's happening with the majority of the big holding companies. So I think there's a lot of opportunity out there for smaller companies that are nimble and want to operate. For me, I go to the office every day, and there's really only about three of us here today, and probably never more than five people, maybe out of 30. But I spent one day home this week, which was starting at 7 o'clock in the morning and finishing 8 o'clock at night, and then getting up from the kitchen table and say, where do I go? Because I'm already here. So for me, I really want to go to the office. I just don't want to be around the house. At least a 15-minute drive or 20-minute drive going back and forth to work, as it gives you a bit of a break. And I know that, like Jeff said, he's been in the basement now for a year. It's tough. It's tough not to, it's tough to build a culture. I mean, most of the people I know, I knew before when I left the company. I still know them because we brought over all the DDP people that I knew. So we still have somewhat of a culture, but it would be hard to build a culture for an agency from everybody working from home. So
yeah, that's interesting insight. It's one of the things that I've struggled with, being at home, that face-to-face contact. How about you, Carol? ATB?
Been an interesting journey. Can you hear me okay? Louder?
You're a little bit light, but I think if you speak up, we'll be okay.
Okay. It's been a really interesting journey, and it's hard to answer that without kind of compartmentalizing. So from an ATB perspective, as a regional financial institution in the province of Alberta, it's an amazing responsibility and opportunity that we have when you think about what Albertans need of us from a relief perspective, from an advice perspective, as they deal with all things COVID. And so that's been quite a privilege and quite a responsibility organizationally. And then we are fairly unique in that we have this wonderful in-house agency, as well as a very deep and broad team of marketers and communicators. It's been really challenging. And I would say that the bright spot in all of this has come from some of the work that we've had the opportunity to do. And so we call it Built to Help Albertans, but it's going far beyond product. And it truly is, what can we do to help people in Alberta get through this? So whether it's feeding our unsung heroes of truckers, or whether it is helping marginalized communities, and just going above and beyond. And I would say that the team has gotten their inspiration from doing work that really matters. But I'm not going to pretend that it hasn't been a really hard journey from a personal perspective for people, as well as from a work perspective. And Frank, I appreciate you being in the office, because I've been in the office 3 times since March 11th. And it becomes a circle and a cycle for a lot of our team members, that you don't know what I'm dealing with on the floor. And a lot of our team members are dealing with kids and family and mess, and the psychology of it, I think, has been really challenging. But the inspiration has come from the work and from actually making a difference.
Yeah, it's interesting, Carol. I'll get back to your point around families having to deal with all of this at the same time in a second. Jeff, how have you found it, buddy?
So for me, it's a bit of an odd one, because I've been working with Jenny Smith and her team off and on for the last 12 years, and more formally in the last 12 months as of March, when COVID hit. So, I've been working from the basement with other folks for a long time before COVID hit. And so ironically, when COVID hit, as Frank mentioned, things got better for me, because people were all on the same playing field as I was. Everything was equal, that everybody was in their own homes. And weirdly enough, collaboration got better, because when we got on the calls, you could, like we are now, you could see people's faces and the reactions to your ideas. And prior to that, it was odd that, like before COVID, we were always just on the phone. So, you know, when you were pitching an idea and you didn't hear any response, you knew you were in trouble. But when you know, it's funny when you're pitching ideas, you can actually get more from it when you don't see anybody, or when you don't hear talking and you just see the reaction on their faces. So once we started Zooming everything, I think the work was getting better. So it was interesting from that respect. I think the difficulty for me personally was, you know, collaboration in the tight rooms that Frank talks about, and culture and being in the room, which we used to do from traveling back and forth. So what I started doing, I know this is going to sound really silly, but like March and April, you know, I would get a briefing, and when the streets were really quiet, I would get in my car and drive around the Henday when it was empty, and I'd want to have like 10 ideas by the time I got home after I drove around the city. So I would try and challenge myself in different ways to try and come up with ideas. But I would say that the collaboration with the rest of the team over Zoom got better and better as COVID went on, and now it seems very, very seamless to me, working like it's almost like we're in the same room. So it doesn't seem to be that much of a problem. But from the client side, I guess most of our clients are off the island anyway. So again, talking over Zoom and over the phone was, you know, commonplace. And so that just became easier. And I think what happened is when we saw people in their own homes putting on their toddler's socks on the bed during a presentation, everything, you know, everybody's guard came down and nobody gave a shit about what the muffins were like on the boardroom table. And it was just about the work. So I really feel in the last, you know, X number of months, it's now more about the work than all the trappings that surround it, which is why, you know, I have baseball hats on because of no haircuts and things like that. And it's okay, where before it was more of an issue. So I think things have gotten a bit looser, a lot more personal, and a lot better as far as the quality of work, because right now all it seems we have left is the work, and that's where our focus is. So I've been very optimistic about it.
I think along with that is that the new normal will be a combination of working from home and working at the office. And I see where we, like TELUS have indicated that they're only going to have so many desks, and none of them are at work for months now. And what they're saying is that they're going to cut back on the office space. And I think this will happen with many, many companies. They'll cut back on the office space because you don't need it. I mean, we got 8,000 square feet here, and there's 3 people today. And the fact is that what we might do is rotate and have, say, 15 desks or 20 desks, and then you book a desk and you come in Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and the other people come in with Tuesdays and Thursdays or alternate. But I think there's going to be more movement towards something that we never felt that we would do before, and now we've proven that we can operate from home and still get work done. In fact, we did a big project in Seattle for a development company, and everybody worked in different places. I had a creative director up in Kamloops. I had somebody else over in Toronto. And I mean, and yesterday I was on a call with TCAN, which is the TCAN advertising agency, Rick, you know. And I said, now it's time that TCAN actually can become a company that really, after 30 years of trying to work together, now you need to work together. And you don't need to develop and have the same skill set as another agency. Use that other agency to work with. Build a different model, because the models have to change. And I think now what's happened is forced us into making decisions that we should have made before.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think we've seen that at ZGM for sure. That the first couple of weeks were a little bit strange, but everyone knows Kurt. Kurt was working between two offices, and his days weren't that different. He was traveling up the QE2. He didn't have to do that anymore. He could work from home. So any other tools, guys, that you provided for your teams other than Zoom? Were there any other software pieces that you already had that were kind of brought up or that you brought in new to help collaboration? Carol, did you guys do anything at ATB differently?
Really good position going into this with technology and infrastructure. So it was very easy for us to take everybody that wasn't frontline and send them home because the infrastructure was already there. So people dealt with their own personal bandwidth issues and fixed that. But it was pretty seamless in what we were able to do really quickly from a technology perspective.
Yeah. Frank, did you guys do anything? Because you basically rebuilt a company over this period as well, huh?
It was very interesting. I mean, for me, right in the middle of, I had reached out to DDB just after I left a year and a half or 2 years ago. And I asked him, I said, well, I was going to actually go out on my own completely. I had created a company called Think, THINC, and it was going to be me, and I was going to be sort of the old professor, not Jerry Lewis, but the old professor, where I'd be able to help get into the CEO. Because the big issue with our industry is that we're blocked. We're blocked from necessarily getting in with the CEOs. And smaller agencies can do that because they work in different cities, but you never get into the top level of most companies any longer. You're working with a marketing director, he or she, and sometimes they have their ideas. And if you have an idea, they don't want to take it forward. And yet, when I talk to the president directly, they like the idea. They say, yeah, that could work. Well, what's happening is you just don't get those ideas. So I think now what we're trying to do is get closer to the boardroom with our top clients, and I think there's an opportunity for us to do that. We're actually making a difference because we're going to our clients with different ideas, not necessarily advertising ideas. I mean, I can tell you that right now that there's so many companies that have to change their strategy and their model. What they don't need to do is to have another advertising campaign advertising the same thing that's not working for them. They have to find ways of changing how they do business before they go out of business. And you talked about pivoting. Well, you better learn how to pivot because every industry that you look at airlines, you look at the department stores, but and on the other hand, look how well, like for example, we had a pizza client, and they have 100 stores, and 70% of their business was walk-in, and 30% of their business was takeout. Well, since COVID, it just reversed that whole model, and 70% is delivery and 30% is walk-in. Well, fortunately for them, they're doing well. But not every business can say that. So you got to look at what businesses that you're going to continue. I mean, this is the one time that I would love to own a liquor store, and I'll do home delivery for you. You know, you know. So I'm very positive about where we can go. But I think that one of the things that we're not going to force our people to do is we're not going to force you to come back to the office if you're uncomfortable until we know it's safe.
Yeah.
We're just not going to do it because, and there's recent studies that just came out in the last day or two. 80% of people don't want to go back to the office.
Yeah. Yeah. So Carol, speaking of pivots, banking online, all those outlets sitting around the province of Alberta with the ATB logo on them, be ghost towns at the moment. How have your digital assets been inundated? How did the flex test go, and what does that mean for your marketing going forward?
So from a digital adoption perspective, we just shaved 5 to 10 years out of adoption from a consumer perspective. And we have the programs that we've been working on to accelerate our digital offering has been accelerated that much quicker, which is really exciting. And it's making sure that we are really tapped into consumer behavior. And how do we add greater value beyond just an app? So that's something for sure. And then when you look at the footprint of those branches with the ATB logo on them, how do they provide greater value than what a transaction would have done? And so that's what we're working on right now. And it's really exciting how quickly adoption has elevated. And what that means in terms of what customers expected in February is very different to what they expect today and what they will expect 3 months later.
Jeff, most famous for a couple of different campaigns that I really know you for. One of them being Nova Scotia and that travel. What do you think's, what are you hearing around the travel marketing industry right now? What's happening with your ear to the ground in that industry?
Well, it's not Nova Scotia, although I wish I did that too, but it was Newfoundland and Labrador
Sorry, mate, yep.
with both. But yeah, I mean, we work with Destination St. John as well, and just kind of echoing what Frank has said about business solutions versus communication solutions with not only Destination St. John's, but the rest of our clients. What we did in March, soon as it turned and all that uncertainty came down and it locked down, what we did is, went immediate into proactive mode and created, because one of the first reactions for most of our clients was like, we're just going to kind of shut everything down for a bit and see where this goes and how the dust settles. And we knew that wasn't going to work. That was going to be unacceptable, especially in the travel business, but with all of our clients. So the thing that I'm the most proud of in the last year is right away created, I think, about 8 decks of ideas, about 20 to 30 pages each over the course of 2 weeks' time. So staying up basically night and day and going back to those clients and saying, okay, we know you don't want to say anything right now, but you need to be talking to your customers. Like you need to be out there. And we garnered a lot of respect from our clientele. And thankfully, most of the people who wanted to shut down and not say anything went ahead with a lot of that work. And we've talked about awards in the past, and they're wonderful. The accolades are great, but this was probably one of the most rewarding endeavors was keeping people, businesses, and industries afloat and kept going. Because I mean, at that time, very early on, we were talking about, there were agents. Frank knows there's agencies across the country going out of business, probably quicker than we had expected. And we didn't want that to happen to us. So we thought we better get proactive. We better put a bunch of, not only smart communication and advertising ideas in front of people, but business ideas on how they can pivot within their industries and how these industries can go. And, thankfully, Newfoundland has had, far less cases, and they shut, and everybody's now back at the office again, but still the bubble is closed. For tourism, it was the Atlantic bubble, and then Newfoundland shut their border down completely. So we're trying to do pride in place and get people within, the province to keep their province alive and thankfully, it's a very proud province where the people like to support one another. So getting them out to the restaurants and businesses to keep them alive was an easier task than it might be, say, in Toronto or somewhere else, but still had to be done. So pretty proud of that endeavor very early on with COVID, to go out there and be proactive, because otherwise we'd be doing nothing and I'd probably be out of a job right now. So that's
I agree with what Jeff has said. We've been reaching out to the various associations, Destination British Columbia, the Hotel Association, and we're working with an outside partner to put together kind of a package that allows you to get certain things for half price. Because if you take a look at where they're at, if they've got 20 or 30% occupancy, they're lucky. And most of them are dying on the vine. I mean, in Vancouver, I was out a week and a half ago to a fairly large restaurant called the Italian Kitchen, and my business partner that I was with, there was 2 of us in the restaurant at lunchtime, and that was it. And damn well, and I'm talking about a big restaurant that could hold 150 people or so, and you can see where they're all dying on the vine, and I can't see how these businesses are going to last. And the hotels in the same way. I mean, I live in the Shangri-La, which is a complex in Vancouver, which is hotel and condominiums, and they haven't been open for a year. They're, you know, and so you just wonder how long they can continue to, you know, to go like this. So we've been reaching out and trying to talk about putting together packages and where they all get involved and they all get it in. But somebody has to sort of pony up the first part. Somebody has to say, yes, I'm willing to do this, and the other ones will jump on. But they're so used to doing things the way they've been doing them for years that they're not trying to, they're not willing to take that risk. You probably know in Alberta that the Travel Alberta account was put up for review, and they just brought in a new president by the name of David Goldstein, and they just reached out to all the agencies and said, we're going to pull it all back in and we'll get out later.
Yep. Yep. We'll reset and come back in later.
I don't know if you were on that list. I know that D&D and Edmonton were on that list and got the call. But I think what's happening is that, let's say they had an $8 million budget, of which $2 million was their in-house staff. So maybe they had a 10 or 12, I don't know what the number would be. But my guess is they don't have the money that they thought they might have had before. So they may have 20% of whatever they had. Victoria Tourism, we were going to pitch them, but then they got 80% less of what they have. And you go, well, you don't have any money to do anything. And yet you're going to want us as an agency to do everything for you and not want to pay us because you think we're proud to do it for you. I'm not that proud. You know, unless you have the money, I'm not doing it. I'm sorry. You know, you can't work us that hard, you know? So yeah, I mean, it's like every business is going through the same thing.
Yep.
Particularly
Agreed.
tourism is really in trouble.
Yeah.
I think
So we're going to take a, sorry, Carol, didn't mean to interrupt. We're going to take an advertising break right now. We'll come back to this point because I got a good question on that one to I think there's a prize, something that we're going to do now.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name's Colin Christensen. I'm co-chair programming here with Ad Club. So we're going to take a quick break and to give away some prizes. So I have a list of all the attendees here tonight, and we have two prizes to give away right now. So we have two $30 gift cards to from graciously donated by Town Center Brewery here in Edmonton. So I'm going to randomly select two names, and if you hear your name, if you could just unmute yourself and say hello, or just throw something into the chat so I know you know you're here. If not, I'll have to redraw. So anyway, so the first prize here is going to Kiri Wazinski. Kiri, are you here? Is Kiri here?
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect. Okay. You won $30 to Town Center Brewery.
Yay, thank you.
Yay, Kiri.
You're very welcome. Okay, so second gift card is going to Marissa Manzoko. Is Marissa here?
Yes, hi.
Hello, congratulations. So you won $30. So to Town Center Brewery. So we'll send you more details to your respective emails. But anyways, yeah, thank you. That's it for the first brief interlude. So Rick, back to you.
Thanks, sir. Sorry, Carol, I cut you off there. We were talking about tourism and industries in trouble.
Sure. Thanks, Rick. I was just going to return to what Jeff had said about that proactive reach out and the sentiment of remaining relevant. And even if you can't travel right now, or if I can't eat in my favorite restaurant, it's remaining relevant. And I'm on the board of Theatre Calgary and talk about an industry that has been disrupted. And the question has been, with much fewer dollars and a lot of people trying to be relevant to that community, what can we do that's different? And that's where I think the sweet spot really exists, is how do you remain relevant for the long term? Because we are going to come out of this, and how do you keep a top of mindedness with that base and keep them loyal as we work through it? So I was just reflecting on a comment that Jeff had made.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the other interesting thing to take out of this is never stop pitching, as that's a thing. I think that's a Frank Palmerism from Dan King, but never stop pitching and always be in front of clients to help out. And Jeff, your fill a book full of ideas is great for any agency, even when you're sitting around twiddling your thumbs in normal times, let alone these times, but to always be out there in front of your clients helping to solve. We're in the industry of solving business problems creatively. If we can do that continuously and helping our clients out, whether they be internal or external, that's what we're all about.
I think one of the things too is if you might take a look at one industry might be able to help another. So if you've got enough accounts or you're working with other agencies, one agency might have a client that fits with another client, meaning that you can put the two together, because we're looking at maybe doing some virtual exhibitions that, like if it was a car show, you can't go to the car show, but you definitely could do a car show online. Where you buy a booth and you're just looking at different ways of creating capital for yourself and for the client. And so we're working on a couple of ideas like that for clients that wouldn't have thought of it before. And there's we were talking about that this morning, Bob and I, and a potential client, and they came back to us and said, "Well, I've seen this particular program," and they sent it to us, and we said, "That's exactly what we need to show the client the idea, because when they see this, they'll say, yeah, we can do it." And it was just happened to be there because we're talking to many people, and who cares where the idea comes from as long as you can sell it.
Yeah, I'd like to jump on that, Frank. Is a couple days into the first lockdown, I was pretty bummed out in the spring. I was pissed as a hockey fan that there wasn't going to be any hockey. It was a really nice day out here in Edmonton, so I went around and took some pictures of empty parking lots of arenas, and wanted to cut a little video together as part of the volunteer custodian work for Pride Tape that I do. I wanted to teach myself how to do video because I thought, as an old dinosaur, if I don't learn how to do that, I'm going to be out of a job soon enough. So anyway, went on Saturday, took some pictures of some empty parking lots. The next day, cut it into a video with the line that said something like, now we all know what it feels like to be shut out, towards the LGBTQ community. Posted it on Instagram, and then a week later, I was talking to a friend in New York who works for the NHL. And anyway, we're just bullshitting around, and then brought up that video, and he said, "What? Like, you did that video?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "That was sent all over our office with people saying, why can't we do work like this?" So anyway, so they called on some other things, but I just thought, to Frank's point, it's like, do what you enjoy and do what you think is necessary and right out there, and you never know where it might lead you. So yeah, it's just I just listening to what you said, Frank, hit home with respect to that project, and looking for, sometimes it's looking for new opportunities, but sometimes it's just not even knowing their opportunities. It's just doing the work, and a lot of times people will find you.
I don't know how many people are online that are sort of in the area of creative, and I know, Jeff, you've been a great creative people all along. And there's an outfit out of Calgary called Camino. You've probably heard of Camino, and they've got a list of artists and writers, and I'm more than open to reach out to use people, but for the most part, most creative directors aren't. And I say that in coming from a creative background myself, where they go, "Well, we got our own community, and I'm comfortable with using my people. I wouldn't try that." And I go, "Damn. This is the way it's going to be. Trust me, I'm an old guy now. I've been doing this for so long now that I think I'm going to get younger, and so I can start thinking differently. But open your minds to new opportunities and try new things. Come on."
The thing, Frank, is we're doing it anyway. Like I'm noticing, I'm seeing some of the names and faces of my friends on this call, and just as COVID was hitting, I mean, we're still going out for lunch and throwing ideas around because we need to do it. And we love to do it. So whether we're asked to do it by our agencies or not, we're doing it on our own personally, just to stay sane, and just to get to play and and bullshit around thoughts and ideas with our peers that are very talented. Like we need that to keep going. So whether we're told to do it or not, we're doing it. And we're doing it with a lot of people on this call. So it's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm going to change gears a little bit along the same lines as 2020, but in addition to the pandemic, we've seen social justice movements like Black Lives Matter also being fairly prominent this year and really ripping through a lot of industries. Has your business changed or responded to this in any way? And Carol, I'm going to ask you because it was a relevant question that we had when we were talking to you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a company that's always prided ourselves on really being aware of diversity and inclusion, Black Lives Matter reinforced that we are nowhere near there as a company or as a community or as a country. And it really made us take a look at what our practices are, what are systemic issues. And there's a lot of work that we're doing around this to bring somebody in from the outside to look at what those issues are and to really try to fix them. And this has a special meaning for me personally, because the first time that diversity and inclusion really hit my radar would have been in 1991 with Rodney King. And if there's, Jeff and Frank, you guys remember Rodney King, and other people may not. But it's so sad because that turned into 6 days of rioting and 63 people died. And yet this many years later, we're going through the 2020 version of Rodney King with George Floyd. And it's really heartbreaking. And it's an opportunity to not just let this be in the moment and to actually make it change how we live as a society and what's important to us. And so my hope is that the conversation and that action actually continues, and it's not lip service. And it's not lip service, it's actually understanding and changing the way that we operate.
On a call that I was on today with COVID, they had shown me a deck that they just put together for the beats that you wear, and the whole program is for the Black colleges, for all the people that want to get into the creative arena, and it's a fantastic program. I got to tell you that if anything at all, there's again so much opportunity in that area if you start looking at it. I mean, it's hard to keep up with the opportunities as far as we just need more people to be able to execute them. You can come up with an idea. The fact is, it's now finding the people to be able to do it.
I think for me, one of the best experiences that I've had in the last 5 years is certainly working in and around the Pride Tape project. And what's happening there is the success comes when you get to the people that are doing all the hard work now. It's just finding them. But it now, thankfully, with social, it's not that hard. And I wear the baseball hat in honor of Mark Borbashevsky, who just got traded from the Senators to the Predators. And a couple of weeks ago, dabbling in video and trying to teach this old dog some new tricks, I was putting this video together. So I reached out to the people that are interacting with Pride Tape on social, and I asked them what their vision of the future is. Could they give me their vision of the future with just one word? And I'm gonna weave that into a video. And everybody that I reached out to got back to me within 10 minutes and said, what can I do? How can I help? So if you have the right idea, you got to get to the people that are already doing the hard work. Like whoever was involved in that project, with me, it's actually a lot easier than what everybody else is doing. And connecting with those people and seeing what they're willing to do for you is quite phenomenal and certainly rewarding. So with whatever the cause you feel personally passionate about, stick with it. I mean, it's hours a day, 7 days a week, 5 years, but it's worth it. And again, the people you meet that are doing all the right things for the right reasons, and just kind of, it's like the remora fish. It's just like latch on and hang on and go for the ride, and hopefully collectively together we can make a huge difference out there. And it's happening. I mean, we get letters every day or every couple days from parents thanking you for how you saved their kids' lives. So it's good stuff, and it's what we want to do. And I think for our client work at Ray, there's always a socially conscious aspect to the business that ends up being more important than what they do for a living. Like one example is Evergreen Recycling, a small client in St. John's that hires, people that are struggling with mental health issues, and they throw 1/3 of their garbage into the landfill and don't recycle it. Well, it's not 1/3 of the garbage that's going into the landfill. It's all those people with mental health issues that don't have jobs because that extra money isn't coming into the business. So that's the more important angle you got to take with something like that, and just think about every client's work a little differently with those new perspectives that are more meaningful. I think is really the way to go.
You know what I think is really fascinating is in these times, as we try to do great work with great companies and take care of our teams and our family, when you get to do something that you really care about, it makes a difference. But it is also so inspiring to lift you out of the grayness that can become the everyday. So there's absolutely a societal purpose for this, of making a difference and the greater good. But what it does for yourself and the echo that you can have because you really care about something, to me, is unstoppable.
Yeah, well, thanks, Carol. Like on a personal level, I'll just be completely open with everybody here in this forum and say, this has taken a toll on us all, I'm sure professionally and personally. Like you go through struggles, and working on something like that, when you get a message from a parent, like you said, Carol, it pulls you out of it. And then when you're working on it, all of a sudden hours turn into days, and it never seems like work, and it's really enjoyable. But I have said to very close friends that, if it wasn't for that, I don't know where I'd be as far as, my own anxiety and depression since we've been locked down. So it really helps to work on things that are really meaningful.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to work closely with the Hockey Diversity Alliance and do that work during the finals and during that period of time. And for a lot of folks at the agency who I would call hockey fanatics or keeners, that was their outlet as part of that. And then adding so much value along the way was definitely something that kept them sane through this whole thing as well. So it's been really good for us too. I'm going to turn over to a couple of questions that I've got in the chat. And then if you are game enough to get on camera, you can put your hand up through the wonders of technology, and I will try and make sure that I get you on and you can ask your questions direct as well. But I've got one in here in the chat from Sharon Naruzi, who's part of the ACE team and an ex-ZGMer. To what extent should companies take COVID into consideration in terms of their campaign messaging moving forward? Carol, interested to hear your angle on this from client side. How do you feel about continuing on the COVID message?
Well, so when I read that question, to what extent should you take COVID into consideration? 1,000% you should take COVID into consideration, because it's changed attitudes and behaviors and mindsets and every place that your customer is. That doesn't mean that you have to shoot a spot with somebody wearing a mask. It doesn't mean you have to say we're in it together. So taking COVID into consideration is understanding what's happened to people's mindsets and how they're going to react. And that's where I think the opportunity to be contextually relevant doesn't mean that I have to show a mask or show social distance. It means I have to be deeply in tune to where people's headsets are.
Great, thanks. Jeff, what do you think, mate?
Well, I was just going to say, to me, it sounds like somebody asking you, consider how people are living their lives. I mean, it's the biggest part of our lives right now. And when we're looking at demographics, psychographics, whatever, it absolutely, as to Carol's point, 1,000% has to be considered into how we're living, how you're connecting with this audience. And the first thing that you should be thinking about on how they're living their lives is how they're living their lives with COVID. So yeah, I mean, it's absolutely.
I came down in the elevator today. Up in the little box, the TV said a couple, elderly couple that had been married for 66 years, died an hour apart in separate hospitals. That hit me pretty hard. And obviously, COVID, I think, has made all of us, everybody that I know, more caring about the other human being than ever before. I mean, it's brought probably me a lot closer to every employee. I'm very careful about how I approach them on a day-to-day basis. Not like I'm not saying I was some guy that would drive them crazy. I'm just saying, how's your day? How's it going? How are you dealing with today? Before I get into the issues of what I need them to do, I'm more caring and trying to be more responsible as an employee than I would have been maybe prior to COVID. So I think if anything, we're going to come out of this maybe with a healthier attitude towards our other human being.
Maybe
Yeah,
I can jump into that. Sorry, but Frank, that really speaks to me because I would like us to come out tighter as a humanity, as a human race through COVID. And what scares me is I don't know if we actually are. If I look at the criticism and the finger pointing, and I look North Calgary versus South Calgary, what really scares me is that maybe we're not going to come out of this closer together. And I think that would be the deeper tragedy.
Well, I don't know if you saw most recently. We do some work with TELUS, and a couple of years ago, when I was talking to Darren Entwistle, the president, I told him that, what are you going to put on your tombstone? I mean, everybody wants to sort of, at some point in time, when you leave this life, you want to be known for something. And I said, you've done so much for the community, and you've put a lot of money into they put over $1 billion into different funds and associations. And this past week, they came out last Tuesday with the new fund called the Pollinator Fund. And if you haven't looked it up, you should go online and look up, because they're being responsible to health care. They're being responsible for startups. They're being responsible for a number of things. And I think that there's a large organization, not because they're my client. I'm just saying other clients who do the same thing. There's a lot of companies, because I think a lot of younger people and including many others that maybe a bit older are thinking about, I want to deal with a company that has a purpose, a company that cares, has principles, has values. And it's one of the things that I'm thinking that Bob and I and others at the company are trying to build into our own company. Yeah, I want to make money, but that's not at the end of the day. It doesn't matter. I don't need another coat or another car or another. I'm just saying, how do we help others? If we can give back a little bit more than we used to before, just care about somebody a little bit differently than we used to. That's where my head's at.
I think, Rick, one of the questions you asked earlier that I didn't answer when you were talking about processes and procedures that the company may have put in place early on during COVID. We didn't have to worry about the technology side, because again, they were going off the island so much that, going on to the work server and all that stuff was, is in place and relatively easy. But what happened as far as processes and procedures and change was all around morale and to what Frank is talking about. Jenny, who Frank knows very well, who runs the company, is one of the nicest people you'll meet. And it was about changing like we would have a weekly status on Monday, prior to COVID. That changed to bi-weekly and a mandatory happy hour Friday afternoon at 4:00. And then that changed to, statuses 5 minutes every day just to check on people. And then in addition to that, she would check in on everybody individually every day or every couple days, just whether it's a text over the phone or an email or whatever, just making sure, like, how are you doing personally, beyond the workflow that you have. But it was that human connection that was really imperative, not only in Newfoundland, but everywhere, to make sure that the company was, still sane and still treading water. And then again, we looked at everything over a 2-month period. We'd get together as an organization and get really granular about where the company is and how it's doing, and being incredibly transparent, more transparent than ever before, because people needed to know, like there was a lot at stake and a lot going on in their own personal lives with their families. So certainly got really dialed up on processes and procedures around personal mental health within the office, and not so much about the technology and how the projects were going to get done.
Yeah, it's great. It's great, great feedback. I struggle with that personally, as I said at the outset. The getting to touch base with everybody individually is kind of how my personal purpose is growing people in companies. So doing that was harder, I found, through technology than it was individually. So something for all of us to learn, I think, as managers. Okay, now I'm getting knocked on the head to say there's a second draw about to happen, Colin. Is that right?
There is. Thank you. Yes. Sorry to interrupt this really great discussion. So we have two, and these are the final giveaways for today. So the next prize we have is a gift basket that was generously donated from Booster Juice. So it's $100 value. So it includes a gift card to Booster Juice along with some Booster Juice swag. So I'm going to draw again, and our winner is David James. So is David James here?
Yep, I'm here. Thank you.
Right on. Congratulations, David. So fantastic. So that's the Booster Juice gift basket. And the last one is we've put together a little Edmonton local business, or Edmonton local food kind of business gift card pack. So there's a $20 gift card to Kind Ice Cream, a $20 gift card to Donut Party, and a $20 gift card that can be used at either Workshop Eatery or Woodshed Burgers. So all three food groups: ice cream, donuts, and cheeseburgers. So our next winner is Kendra Lucky. Is Kendra here?
I sure am.
Congratulations, Kendra. Okay.
Hey, thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay. Thanks, everyone. And yeah, back to you, Rick.
Thank you, sir. Okay, a couple more questions. So Jill, and then I'll get Kaylin on as well. So Jill, you're up first.
So I was just wondering, how do you guys recommend that, marketers stay top of mind in industries that have been hard hit? For example, travel. I know I get like 7 emails a day from Orbitz and hotels.com that are like, deals, deals, deals. And I'm like, I'm not traveling. What are you talking about? So how do you, actually stay top of mind in a way that's meaningful for people when they're not actually buying your product?
Who wants to take that one? Jeff, you want to go first, matey?
I'll start. Thanks, Jill. Before I answer the question, when I wanted to remind you, Frank, when you brought up the topic of tombstones, the first job I had when I arrived at Palmer Jarvis 25 years ago was designing a tombstone for Arnie Nelson. So I wanted to remind you of that. Frank.
I remember that, and I have a trophy here that I was given from McDonald's about Arnie Nelson. He actually created a kind of a gift statue that if you did something particularly for McDonald's, they'd give you the Arnie Nelson statue. So one year I got it, I was quite taken back by it.
Yeah, I still remember that. 25 years ago, a long time. But Jill, on the question, I would say is that it's back to pivoting. And again, I'll just use the experience with Destination St. John, is that there's an audience somewhere that you can pull from and look at the research, with respect to the province. Ironically, for a province that you could drive across in 5 hours, you'd be amazed at the percentage of the people on the West Coast that had never experienced St. John's. So instead of reaching out to Connecticut or, Upper New York State or Toronto, maybe some of these other places that would previously, vacation in St. John's, it was a perfect opportunity to reach out to these other audiences, these new audiences that maybe had been overlooked before, that are really desperate to want to come in and enjoy it inside the bubble. So that was happening with Halifax coming in. And then as soon as they cut Halifax off, it was reaching out to people within the province and giving them exclusive deals that really, played off of pride and place, which in my opinion, Newfoundland is better than any other province in the country when it comes to pride and place. So again, I would just say you just have to look for that bigger business opportunity. I'm not a big fan of, like we talked earlier about deals. All that does is undermine the quality and the brand that you've built years to set up. So I think it's just looking for new audiences that are just itching to get to your destination and enjoy it. So that's just one example of one market, but I'm sure it's commonplace as you go across the country to do the same thing. I hope that answered your question. I have no idea.
Yes. Yeah.
Carrie, you got any answers to that one? How do you stay relevant with messaging even when you're getting beaten up by something like this?
Yeah, it's interesting. The question is, how do you stay top of mind? And I think the danger is thinking that if I yell the loudest with the best offer, I'm going to be top of mind. And it's not about yelling or offers and promos. It's about relevance. And so Frank talked about a purpose-driven company. I'm going to stay relevant, even if you can't visit my restaurant or stay in my hotel or come into my branch, because we have a shared purpose. And it's about being relevant to people. People will reject brands that put profit over people during these times. People will gravitate and always remember brands that represented what matters to them as human beings. And so I think it's about knowing who you are, having a steadfast purpose, and bringing that to life in ways that are relevant, which is not about a deal and it's not about an offer. It's about relevance.
Anything to add there, Frank? Yep.
I was just going to say that it probably falls in the hands of a lot of opportunities for the smaller agencies too. Because when I said earlier that Dentsu laid off 6,000 plus people, they also, made their, I guess, the number of offers that they have smaller. And my guess is they probably also got rid of a lot of businesses that weren't giving them the kind of revenue return that they need. And of course, if you've never worked for a large organization like an Omnicom, they always want 20-25% margin. Okay. Most small agencies that I know are maybe making 14% as an average, not 25% or 30%. And so I think that it's a bigger opportunity if these bigger companies say, hey, this $1 million account, we can't make any money on it anymore. Well, who's going to make money on it? A smaller agency can make a lot of money on it. So I'm now looking for the fish that in Canada, if Dentsu is going to get rid of some clients, you can say, hey, I can make money on it if you can't.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's an opportunity there. Like you said, I'd never give up on looking. That I put my hat on here that I was given the name solicitous. I'm always soliciting you for a piece of business, as Jeff would say.
Right.
I go out there hunting.
Never stop pitching.
I'm still hunting.
Okay, on to the next question. So, Kaylin, do you want to get on video and ask away?
That sounds great. Well, first of all, I just want to say my name is Kaylin Morrison. I'm a third-year marketing student at U of A, and I really enjoyed the panel today. And before I get into my question, Jeff, I just want to say that me and my family watched your Newfoundland campaign ads, and we actually went to Newfoundland a few years ago and loved it. Beautiful province. So my question today is around students. I'm a student. And so what can students do to stand out and break into your respective industries, especially with the talent pool being so wide open with everything online?
Jeff, I'm going to throw that to you, buddy.
Well, for starters, I would just say be smarter. For one of the things that's happened over this last COVID period is, and again, maybe it's not the same for everyone, but certainly timelines have become a lot quicker and faster. Margins have become a lot smaller and shorter. So the ideas have to be bigger, because chances are you might not, like we always say, is the idea big enough to be executed in black, bold Helvetica on a white background, and people will get it before you go and shoot anything or do anything with it. So the idea has to be pretty damn great Funny you should ask, Kaylin, is that we just looked at, I think it was an open night a couple of weeks ago with my colleague Terry, was doing a round table with a bunch of students out of Humber in Toronto, and looking at, actually, I think we're hiring two and bringing them down from Toronto to Newfoundland. And, you know, you're not going to get, we don't expect the polish to be in the portfolio. That's just unfair of us to think that. If you have it, fantastic. It will put you up over the next person. But it's like, are you intuitive? You know, do you think on your feet? How do you react to the work? And one thing I've said my entire career is, I would rather, like, thing that's important to me is flipping through a magazine, whether it's applied arts or communication arts or whatever, and being able to recognize the good work. It really scares me when somebody looks at really good work but doesn't see it or doesn't understand it. Then I think that they're not getting it. So I don't even care if you've done the great work yet, because the expectations certainly aren't there, but I certainly want you to be able to recognize it when you see it. And that's when I know that this person's on the same wavelength as me. And that's the type of person I want to work with coming out of school.
Carol?
Yeah, absolutely. It's how do you differentiate yourself? Because grades are one thing and a book is one thing, but how do you truly, number one, connect yourself? It's not just about getting a job. It's about getting the right job where you're going to thrive and get the most out of them, and they will get the most out of you. So it's about that passion. And then what do you do to differentiate yourself? Because if you're throwing in a portfolio or you're throwing in a resume that looks like literally 1,000 other resumes, like that's bad on you. So how do you bring yourself to bear in a way that's really creative and thinks big?
I know there was an article, I think, in Strategy Today or the Drum publication. And one of the things that I was talking to a couple of students about was it's very difficult now to get in front of the right people because of COVID and what we're doing. And I said, there has to be something that's created to be able to get that resume in front of somebody, even though, while it's difficult, to what Jeff had said and Carol had said, is to make it different. It's just finding a different way to get it in front of us, even though we might not be hiring anybody right now. You know, that's the problem, you know. And one of the agencies that I reached out to is, I said to NABS, NABS is our National Agency Benevolent Society. They have huge demands right now for more money because there's a lot of workers that work for advertising agencies that have been around for years and they don't have any jobs at all. They've been trying to find ways to raise new money. But the students that are coming out of school, they also are looking for jobs, and there's got to be a new and different way for them to reach out. And this is something that I reached out to a couple of schools to say, how do we help? How do we make this process better?
One thing I'd like to add to that is you really have to understand the quality of your own work. Like, I mean, after 30 years, there's still people in the business I wouldn't waste their time showing my work to, because I'd be too embarrassed, like, of wasting their time. So I think there's, like, you have to know, you know, who to show it to based on where it's at. And you got to be a certain kind of asshole if they're not going to give you 5 minutes of your time. So, you know, some of the downfall is that people ask people for a half an hour or an hour. And if you know the business well enough, you know that they don't have it. But if you can just ask for somebody, anybody's 5 minutes of their time, I think if they don't give you that, then you probably don't want to work with them anyway. But you have to have, like, your work has to be applicable to what that person needs and wants. You can't just waste their time, like, showing them something that has nothing to do with what they do. So you gotta vet your own work and make sure that it's appropriate. And one thing I just want to add too, because Frank's on the line, we haven't seen each other in a long time, but when I got a job with Palmer Jarvis in '95 in Vancouver, and I worked on the design side with Characters Design. And one of our jobs at Characters was we would sit and wait for the art directors and writers to finish their layouts. And our job was to spray mount that work for the pitches. So we used to sit there till sometimes till 2 or 3 in the morning to wait for the art directors and writers to finish their stuff. And then I would spray glue it to the boards for the presentations the next day. I don't mean, maybe this is offside, but I just couldn't see that happening today. But I loved it because at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock at night, the writers and art directors started asking me what I thought of their work. And I started to get to contribute and become friends with these people that were incredibly talented. And it was probably the best education I ever had because I was willing to stick around at night and spray glue boards. And it's like, I'd still do it today if I got the chance. So I think that's very important as well. Like, even if it doesn't exist nowadays, stick your nose into places and see how you can help, because you'll be surprising where it'll get you.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think we've got time for one more. Mr. Archer, you're up, sir.
Thanks, Rick. This has been awesome. Thanks. I've really enjoyed this. Thanks for the conversation. And Frank, you and I have never met, but you're one of my career heroes, and I know everything you've done, and I'm very impressed. And that's kind of my question is like, the last question was, how do you get in? My question is like, how do you stay in? Because I've been doing this maybe 15 years or so now. Jeff,
I thought your question, Justin, was going to be, how can I get out?
Well, I don't ever want to do anything else. Like, it's so much fun. It's just a wonderful way to earn a living. It's weird. People don't really get it if they're not kind of one of us, but it's a lot of fun. Frank, you've been doing this. I mean, I couldn't even guess how many years. Jeff, I know you haven't. Like, how do you keep it going for that long?
Well,
and keeping this business.
If you get fortunate enough, like us, that are all three of us that are on the, or 5 of 100 of us are on the call today. I love what I do. I mean, every day to me is a new experience. It's like discovering St. John, Nova Scotia, or St. John's. I've been there. I've been on Cabot. I was on Cabot Hill when the fog came in, and they told me I better get off the hill because if I don't, I'm going to get lost. And some of that best advertising was done out there by Noel Day. I mean, he's done wonderful advertising. But for me personally, every single day is different, and I don't know what it's going to bring me because I'm open-minded to discovery. And so, I can't wait. And I'm constantly got a piece of paper that I'm writing something down and trying to get to it. And for me right now is, how do I help somebody else who wants to be in this business get into it?
I think for me, 2 days ago, with a 3.5-hour time zone difference, they kind of let me do what I need to do. And when I wake up, I get started, and on any given day that changes. But usually I get started around between 6:30 and 7 in the morning. So I started at 7 a couple days ago, and I finished at 11:30 at night because we're working on a campaign that's going to go out the door tomorrow or sometimes on the weekend. It's very timely. But it's like, I loved it. It's probably, I think one of the best things I've worked on in the last few years. And it's like 11:30 at night, I thought it was, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's like, you love doing it and you want to do it. It's not always like that. And most times it isn't. But to Frank's point, I would say that to Kaylin too, on your question about getting into the business. If you don't thoroughly enjoy it and love it now when you're starting, don't bother. Because it's crazy at its best at times, but the people in it are crazy and wonderful, and that's what makes it enjoyable. But really, when you focus on the work itself, and you can get some good feedback, a letter from a parent, like you said, if somebody that decides to travel somewhere because of something you said or did, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool feeling. It's a great reward for what we do, and it as other people will say, it beats getting up in the morning and digging ditches or doing something else that maybe, not that I have anything against that, but maybe is something that you don't want to do.
Justin, though, I have to tell you, though, people that used to say to me, what was it like back then, Frank? And I have to say that, well, wait a minute. I was on sort of the last end of the ad man, the admin at TV. Unfortunately for me, I was also very lucky to meet people who were in that movie or in that TV show, or people that after DDB, I know Keith Ryan.
Did you know Bill Bernbach? Did you ever meet Bill Bernbach?
I can tell you this. I had the opportunity about 5 years ago to spend a month working out of Bill Bernbach's office in New York. I went to New York. I said I wanted to spend a month there, and Keith Reinhardt it was his office, and he said, I'm going to be taken off, but you can have my office for the month. And it was Bill Bernbeck's office with the original ads on the wall that were being think small, you know, the Volkswagen ads. And I walked to work every day, going to that office and living that time and thinking about those ads that had to be done and living part of history. And I can honestly say that that was a great experience for me.
Well, in the spirit of kissing ass, I will tell you that when I worked for Frank in Vancouver, my parents came out once to visit, and it was at Christmas time. And this was back when the Vancouver Grizzlies were happening. And Frank was kind enough to give me and my brother and my parents his Grizzly tickets, which were right underneath the basket. So, you know, to my parents, that was like me knowing somebody like Mick Jagger. Like, how on earth could this kid get these tickets underneath the basket and it was fun because Charles Barkley flew right over top of my mother when he was going for a shot. So that was courtesy of Frank Palmer. So that was my Bill Bernbach moment way back when. So thanks again, Frank.
You're welcome.
Well, I think we've got to wrap it up there, folks. So thank you so much for our three panelists today, Jeff McLean, Frank Palmer, and Carol Schmeigel. Thank you so much for spending time with us at ACE, and I'll hand it back to Colin or Jill.
Steve.
Jill.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much to all three of you for sharing your perspectives. This was an incredible event. Really enjoyed listening to all of your thoughts on this past year that was and where we're going. I just wanted to thank everybody for attending tonight. We know it's not the usual way of things, and we're so glad that almost 70 of you chose to join us tonight, and that's amazing. Probably down to how we lured you in with people who are much cooler than us. But we wanted to just give you a couple things about what's coming with ACE. We're having an amazing speaker series that starts in the new year. Our first one is in February. We're actually partnering with the Calgary Marketing Association to put these on. We're starting with a lovely woman by the name of Anita Chauhan, and she is actually an expert in diversity in marketing. So she's going to be making the connection for us between, we've been hearing a lot about diversity and inclusion. How do we actually turn that into action in our marketing campaigns and our advertising as we go forward? So that's the first thing to look forward to in the new year. Also, ACE Awards submissions are coming up, but in past years, we've usually sent out the call for entries before Christmas and then it's due right after you get back. In the COVID year, we didn't want to do that to you. So our new submission deadline is going to be January 28th. So you have lots of time after the Christmas break to come back and get all of those things in order. We know that it's a very busy time for everybody as, new business is coming in, people are feeling good about the economy, that kind of thing. So I wanted to give you a little bit of extra time there. And yeah, I realized I never introduced myself. So by the way, I'm Jill. I'm the president of the Advertising Club of Edmonton this year. And I hope you all have a fabulous Christmas and a very happy New Year. Thank you so much for joining us, and cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.